Chapter 3 continued.
Oh, we're gonna be in trouble if we don't make it to Sirius Observatory before it gets dark,
Inuzuka said, spreading his hands as if he were catching the snow in his arms. Enby was the first to start walking. For a single moment his posture became hunched over, like his leg was stuck in the snow, but he recovered quickly. It's pretty deep. Be careful, he advised over his shoulder. Judging by his physique and his personality, and among other things, I felt like he was the most dependable of our group. His classification number was 245, political crime, terrorism, rank 5. That meant he was a detective who fought back against terrorists. Maybe his reticent, gloomy disposition came from his background, and maybe he walked like he was dragging his legs along because of old wounds from the battlefield forced him to walk that way. Anyway, there's only one road, so we should probably just keep heading down this way, I said, and Inuzuka and Amino each gave me a look of understanding before following after Enby. Let's go, Miss Kirigiri. I gave her a little push on the back to usher her away from where she'd been standing after being deserted in the snow. Kirigiri turned her youthful brow and winkled. Perhaps we should head back? Huh? After coming all this way? Are you going to walk back? I can hear footsteps. Footsteps? It was quiet where we were standing, perhaps because of the snow. But I still couldn't hear any footsteps. I tilted my head, staring back at her. Her face only looked more vexed at that, as if she understood that she wasn't getting her meaning across. She looked over in the direction the men had already gone. I suppose I shouldn't just abandon ship, she muttered, beginning to walk. Hey, wait a minute! I hurriedly followed after her. She looked like she would disappear into the snow if I took my eyes off her for even a moment. It didn't take me long to pass her, looking back at her over my shoulder. You keep saying things I don't understand. Aren't you bothered by it? Asked Kirigiri, facing forward. By what? The strange request. Well, I mean, the whole thing bothers me, but... Does the person known as Yoshizono Oe even exist, I wonder? Huh? I tilted my head. Yoshizono Oe. If you read the characters for Yoshizono in a different way, in kanji, you could pronounce them as Yuen. Yuen-Oe. You don't mean U-N-Owen, do you? No, come on, you're just imagining things, right? That was the name from the famous mystery novel, And Then There Were None. It's a story where 10 people are killed one after the other on an isolated island, after all of them had received written invitations by a UN Owen. It was a play on the word unknown. Even if, hypothetically, the proxy was UN Owen, what would they be trying to accomplish with that? You aren't trying to say that they're going to reenact And Then There Were None, are you? If they sign their name as a hint like that on purpose, then what are they going to do if someone ends up finding them out before anything happens? It doesn't seem as if anyone's figured it out yet. Kirigiri pointed at the men walking ahead of us. No, but still, you're just thinking too much, right? That would be nice, Kirigiri said, shrugging. Did she sense some kind of danger from whatever the truth was behind that bizarre letter? For now, let's just stick with those guys. If we get left behind in the snowy mountains like this, we'll freeze to death before we can even accept the request, I said, to which Kirigiri nodded, following after me. With how short her stride was, she had to work very hard just to keep up. I walked slower to match her pace. Incidentally, I piped up, why did you decide to become a detective? When you're a detective in middle school, that alone means you have some reason behind it, right? I didn't decide to become anything. Huh? You see, I was born a detective. What, are you trying to be like, hard-boiled with that? I asked jokingly, though in her case I'd say she was more cute-boiled than hard-boiled. But she wore a grave expression without even a hint of laughter. It seemed she was serious about this. Is your family maybe in the detective business then? That's correct, Kirigiri answered succinctly, as she brushed off the snow piling on top of her head. Ah, so you're going to inherit the family business? That's right. This time, her voice sounded like it was hiding some pride. You weren't put off by it? By what? Her face seemed to say as it looked up at me. Family business or not, detective work is really something else. I mean, there are plenty of other life choices out there in the world, right? You could have been an idol, or a nurse, or a baker. People have been telling me for ages that girls aren't meant to be detectives. I never thought of it in terms of like or dislike, answered Kirigiri expressionless. To me, being a detective and being alive are the same thing. Oh, that sounds like super heavy. Are you saying that's what you've been taught? Yes, Kirigiri affirmed readily. She looked like she had never once doubted it as a fact. I got the feeling that I looked all the more fragile in her eyes for their clarity. I was sure I could never imagine the kind of pedigree she was coming from. Kirigiri kept glancing over at me intermittently, like she wanted to say something else. Yes? I prompted, but she quickly averted her eyes before opening her mouth to speak. What about you? Oh, you mean, why did I become a detective? Well, obviously, I wanted to be an ally of justice. I guess. Rescuing those in need. Yeah, that's gotta be what a detective is meant for. She didn't show any particular reaction to my passionate tone of voice. Actually, she was looking at me like I was some kind of strange, unfamiliar creature. What's with that face? I'm being serious here. I see. You're the one who asked, so why are you trying to act like you don't care now? Now that I think of it, even if it's just temporary, you're going to the same school as me as an underclassman, so why don't you just try showing me some more respect? I'm not saying that you should get all formal on me, but you could at least do a little more. Such as? Ah, right. I had a sudden idea. If we're 3 years apart, then, I'm more of a big sister than just an upperclassman. So, you should address me as your sister. How about that? Big sis? Oh, no, you don't have to do anything fancy like that. Just sis or sister, not big sister. Big sister sounds kind of embarrassing. Big sis, Yui? Stop it, stop, you're embarrassing me. Let's do something different after all. It doesn't matter what I call you, Kirigiri said with a sigh. We should hurry and keep going instead, or we're going to be left behind, Big sis Yui. You're doing that on purpose. I covered my face automatically, writhing. This had barely even started, and I could already see it becoming my dark past further down the line. Everyone was going to misunderstand. Kirigiri started walking ahead by herself. I let out a cry of protest and hurried after her. I suddenly saw the men ahead of us, stopped in the road, apparently considering something. Kirigiri and I jogged up to them. They were standing in front of a large sign. Welcome to the despair-esque Sirius Observatory. I didn't know if this was some prank or what, but someone had taken red spray paint and changed the picture-esque into despair-esque. At that time we were strangely indifferent to the ominous hint. Well, that was because we were more concerned with the fact that it meant we were getting close to the Sirius Observatory. We followed the arrow on the sign, and sure enough, we found a narrow road in that direction. The arrow isn't part of the prank too, is it? Quipped Amino, crossing his arms.
Oh, I don't think they're trying to get us into an accident.
Inazuka was calm, but perhaps that was to be expected.
Even if this is a trap, we don't have to worry about keeping warm. I got enough booze for everyone,
he said, patting his bag. What about the miners?
Oh, they can use the body heat.
A lecherous grin appeared on his face. Inazuka may have been class 3, but I couldn't summon an ounce of respect for him. A great detective should be an upright and virtuous gentleman. But maybe that was just stereotype colouring my opinion. Regardless, when it came down to it, he was Class 3. Surely detectives who were Class 2 or 1 were more wonderful people than he was. To say nothing of zero-class detectives who must be on a completely different level. NB led the way down the road, and the other men followed. At this rate, if the sun sets on us, we really might be dead meat. The snowy forest road grew gradually darker, and the wind grew stronger. There was no sign of anything moving other than our group continually trudging forward. The men didn't bother slowing down for me or Kirigiri, and they pulled further and further ahead of us. In the dim light, we had nothing to follow except their shadows and their footprints. Suddenly, Kirigiri pointed ahead of us. "Look, Big Sis Yui, there's light." I peered through the veil of the snowstorm, and sure enough, I could see the faint lights of a building. But wait a minute. You're still calling me that? Kirigiri ignored me, walking forward. Oh, whatever. The building stood on a slightly elevated clearing, its warm light tinting its white surroundings red. The light was probably spilling out from the interior through the glass panels. Fittingly, for the representation of the brightest star down here on Earth, its radiance cut through the gaps in the darkness. But maybe because the snowstorm blowing around us was obstructing my vision, the panorama looked warped, like a mirage or illusion. Finally, we had managed to drag ourselves into the Sirius observatory. Just like Inuzuka had explained, and well, like I had already found out from my research beforehand, the Sirius observatory was a pair of star-shaped buildings. Though from our viewpoint it was hard to say whether it really was a star. It just looked like a flat wall to me. We came across the smaller building first. This was Building B, modelled after Sirius B. I was pretty sure this one was supposed to be the separate building for the entranceway. The walls were all glass panels, so I could see everything inside. I could see the main Building A gleaming off behind Building B too. We all ran into Building B to escape the snow. The automatic front door opened to greet us. Finally, we were somewhere protected from the snowstorm. I patted down my chest, which felt chill to the bone. As we entered, the stairs leading underground were right there in front of us. This was the way to the real front door. Why do they have to build it in such an annoying way? Amino deplored, brushing his dishevelled hair back into an exacting part. We have to go through this underground tunnel just to get to the main building? But they wanted to put observational guest rooms going in all directions, so that's why they didn't put the front door on the main building apparently, I said, remembering the answer from my research.
Still, no one's coming to get us.
Inuzuka stepped down the stairs to stand in front of the large double doors that formed the true entranceway. There was an intercom on the wall next to them. Inuzuka slammed his hand on the button, but there was no response.
Looks like the lights are on, so I doubt that no one's there, but...
He tilted his head.
Maybe they stepped out on some urgent business. Well, there weren't any footprints around the entrance, were there? No one's come in or out of here in hours.
Oh, now that you mentioned it, it's exactly as you say, Amino said in admiration.
No Kiba is one thing, but what's with the proxy being missing too?
Inuzuka put his hand on the door.
Oh, it's open.
The door opened silently. I don't sense anyone, Envy said, peering warily past the door. You people wait here. He nimbly crept through the door and then called back. Clear. We entered too, as directed by that over-dramatized signal. They're not even going to come greet us? This client is absolutely incomprehensible, Amino said, irritated. From there, we travelled down the underground passage for about 20 metres. It wasn't as dark and as damp as one might envision from the Virgin underground passage, but there were the recessed lights every few metres, which made it seem more like an aisle in a movie theatre. At the end of the passageway, there was another double door, just like the first one. There was no keyhole. It opened easily with the pull of the handle. At last, we'd made it to the main building. This time, we went up the stairs to the surface level. A strangely bright light streamed down from above. We all acted like we were on the lookout as we ascended.
Ha ha! So this is the Sirius Observatory,
said Inuzuka in admiration. The first thing we laid eyes on was the dome-shaped ceiling. Looking from the inside, it was completely mirrored. So basically, we had a half-sphere concave mirror overhead. It was this mirror that was increasing the intensity of the light. "What is all this? It feels like we got tossed into some freaky lab experiment," muttered Amino. "It reminds me of Rampo's Hell of Mirrors. Though that was a full sphere that was all mirrored on the inside." A smirk appeared on Inuzuka's face. "Did you know? A concave lens is one of the integral parts of an astronomical observation. Most larger telescopes use them." Our distorted, enlarged reflections appeared on the ceiling. In the world of the concave mirror, we weren't just flipped left to right, but upside down as well. The uncanny face of my warped reflection looked down at me. It wasn't very comforting. "Mirrors sure are strange. They're portals into another world, just slightly off from the world we know. Opened up right there in front of us. Goodness gracious, our good friend Ryuichiro Kiba is quite the eccentric romantic." Inuzuka seemed very moved, but according to my research, the concave mirroring on the ceiling was just aluminium paneling covering the interior of the dome to heighten insulation and illumination. Due to the structure of the building, there were no windows in the central hall. That's why they needed something to brighten things up. There was no way of knowing whether or not the owner of the building was actually all that enamored with mirrors. Once we had all finished climbing the stairs, we were finally able to survey the hall as a whole. It was in the shape of an equilateral regular pentagon. Each side had a door in the middle that led to the guest rooms. 5 doors in all, leading to 5 triangular guest rooms that formed the 5 points of the star. In the center of the hall, there was a large round table. Nearby was a small armchair. By armchair, I mean a comfortable living chair with arms meant for one person to sit and relax on, like a small couch. Actually, there's a detective called the Armchair Detective that solves crimes right where he is without even going to the crime scene itself. The chair there before me looked perfect for a great detective just like that one, comfortably able to think things through, with its upholstery featuring an extremely cushy seat and backrest, supported by wooden legs. And that was everything in the hall. The telescope, which should have been the centerpiece of the whole thing, was nowhere to be seen. "Huh? There was a big telescope set up right here in the photos," I said, crossing my arms. "A year and 3 months ago, Ryuichiro Kiba was taxed extra for tax evasion." Enby had suddenly opened his mouth. "He was overdue, so the telescope itself was collected as payment. They probably just cleaned out the whole area. That's the government for you. They're always like that. They don't give a crap about the places they visit." "Huh? How did you know that?" I asked in surprise. "You'd know if you looked into it," he answered calmly. "Incidentally, the whole building was put up for sale about 2 months ago. It was bought up by a certain IT startup company, but it seems like that was just a shell corporation for some other enterprise. I wasn't able to dig up what they were hiding." "Why are you only now mentioning this?" Amino cut in. "Info is what we deal in, right? What kind of idiot gives their merchandise out for free?" NB's voice cut like a switchblade, leaving Amino with no response. "Well, if Mr. NB's telling the truth, that means Ryuichiro Kiba's already given up the building," said Inuzuka, his face clouding over. "So, the Kiba guy's completely unrelated? In that case, who exactly is our client?" asked Amino, dismayed. No one could answer the question. "At any rate, there's nothing we can do but wait for that proxy to show up. Oe or whoever. If they're acting this high and mighty, the client might be seriously big name," said Amino. We looked at each other and then let our eyes wander, not looking at anything in specific. My chest now felt like it might let out an audible creak from all the small doubts and insecurities I was holding pent up inside. If the owner isn't here, let's just give up on being polite and search the place." Apparently Inuzuka wasn't letting himself be discouraged quite yet. Maybe this is where I should be saying that you could tell he was class 3. He opened the nearest door and peered inside the room. Hey Kirigiri, why don't we look around too? I called out to her. It would be more efficient for all of us to split up. She responded calmly, moving further into the hall. Just when I'd started to think that maybe we were friends, she goes and does this. It felt like I was being scolded by someone younger than me. Crestfallen, I peered into a random room. It was just like the room from the magazine article. The room itself was triangular, but since there was a closet on the right and a bathroom on the left with a toilet and a shower, in practical terms, it was more like it was the shape of a home plate stretched out. The bed was next to the closet, and across from that was a dresser and a mini fridge. The two legs of the isosceles triangle were almost half glass, probably designed to give guests a good view. But when I drew back the curtains and looked outside, all I could see was the white snow swirling in the dark forest. Even if it were midday and not snowing, I don't think the view would have been all that great. These windows probably weren't there to look at things on ground level. They were there to look up at the starry sky. At the very far end of the room, around where the legs of the triangle met in a point, there was a telescope. Unlike the telescope that had apparently been taken in the collections, this was the kind of telescope made for personal use. Though it was bigger and thicker than what I would imagine as the standard telescope. I guess this is what a large aperture looks like. I'm sure the price is proportional. After opening the curtains, I looked into the eyepiece experimentally. But of course, all I could see was a hazy darkness. No stars. With some effort, I changed the angle of the telescope, pointing it into the room. Now when I looked in, I could see through the open door into the hall, though the image was severely blurred.
Getting up to no good already, huh?
A giant monster appeared in the lens. I let out a short shriek, tearing my eyes away from the telescope. Inuzuka was standing in the doorway.
Well, don't scream like that. People are going to get the wrong idea,
said Inuzuka, flustered. Sure enough, Amino came running into the room just a moment behind. Did something happen?
No, nothing to see here, unfortunately.
Inuzuka rubbed at his forehead, trying to make himself look non-threatening.
The rooms are all set up the same. Great place for astronomy.
Honestly, if it wasn't for the weather out there, maybe I could discover at least one star, clucked Amino.
They're still good telescopes. German 200mm Newtonian reflecting telescopes. Look, see here? There's no lens on the end of the tube, is there? You can see right through the concave mirror right there in the back.
Right. And unlike other telescopes, the part you can look into is on the side of the tube. I tried looking through the one earlier in a different room, and I could barely manage to see Building B. Amino gladly went along with Inuzuka's talk.
Right. Those other telescopes you're talking about are your average garden variety refracting telescopes. That type uses a lens to converge the images inside the tube. That's hands down the easiest for a beginner to use, since it's a straight line from the lens. You're looking into where the star is.
Inuzuka had gotten started now, rambling on about telescope trivia in his slurred, drunken speech. I didn't care about telescopes, so I checked the closet and the bathroom, but nothing really caught my eye.
On the other hand, a reflecting type like this one can have a larger aperture for cheaper, because you're not using a lens, you're using a concave mirror. So the image gets reflected in the mirror, and then another mirror inside reflects it off again to the side. So the eyepiece is on the side of the tube. No points for guessing Newton's the one who invented it.
Oh, you certainly are knowledgeable about astronomical observation, Instructor Inuzuka.
Ha! I was in astronomy club back in school. Ha ha!
By which you mean your info is 20 years out of date. I opened the refrigerator, ignoring the conversation. Inside were some well-chilled bottles of mineral water and cola, along with a couple of beer cans. I checked the Best Buy date on the mineral water. Still a ways off. It was probably safe to say that the fridge had been restocked relatively recently. I exited the room, leaving Inuzuka and Amino behind. In the hall, NB was leaning against the table, arms crossed.
Did you find anything?
I asked. No, nothing.
I looked in that room over there, but there really wasn't anything there either. There weren't any cryptic cryptograms or books missing pages or anything anywhere.
We weren't called here to go treasure hunting. Inbi sighed. That's when Inuzuka and Amino came back.
We took off all the sheets, took a peek into the telescope, tried turning on the shower, but didn't find a single thing that looked suspicious. No trace of our mysterious client either, of course.
After that, Kirigiri came out of a different room. She just shook her head silently.
No dice, huh?
What should we do, Instructor Inuzuka? I mean, we can't exactly walk back in all this snow. My cell phone. Yep, just like I thought. It's out of range. I can't make a call from here. We can't call for help.
Hey, now, hold your horses. It's too early to say we should be leaving the place. The proxy still might show up, you know.
Inuzuka said, looking as carefree as ever. Do you really think the proxy is going to show up? Amino was finally starting to doubt him, it seemed. Were we all gathered here for some criminal plan? Is this some kind of trap? Shouldn't we forget about the client already? Enby drawled.
Right. I agree with your point of view, Enby,
said Inuzuka.
But that's exactly why we should start expecting the client. Maybe the interview has already begun. They're putting our patience to the test. So don't you think we should stay true to the client in order to pass?
It would be nice if that were the truth, Amino murmured gravely.
Well, we can't go back either way. We're all prepared to spend the night here, right? We've got exactly 5 rooms lined up right here.
You're going to sleep in a place like this?
Are you going to head back by yourself, Amino? I don't think anyone's going to complain about having one less rival around.
Inuzuka crossed the hall with an easygoing grin.
I'm going to borrow this room here.
After deciding on his own room without anyone else's input, Inuzuka went in and closed the door behind him. Seeing this, Enby silently went into the closest room and closed the door behind him too. Something's not right with those two. Amino set his thin briefcase on the table with a thud. If I knew it was going to turn out like this, I would have prepared way more. This is all I brought with me. I don't even have a change of clothes. All Kirigiri and I could do was look at him in pity. Don't tell me you two are planning on staying here too.
Well, we don't really have a choice. At the very least, we should wait until the night is over if we want to be able to walk back, I said.
Hey, why don't the 3 of us work together? To look and see if there's anyone in the area. I have a bad feeling about this job. Maybe we'd be able to find some help if we all left. Don't you think we should get out of here as soon as possible?
Of course I have a bad feeling about doing this, but it's still better than going outside. We're dead meat if we go under that snowstorm in the middle of the night.
You're going to regret this. You think this is better? You can't say that until you see how it turns out, deplored Amino, clutching his briefcase and heading into one of the empty rooms. The sound of him slamming the door shut echoed throughout the hall.
Oh, we really got our work cut out for us here, huh?
I asked Kirigiri. She was staring at the wall, the eyes in her pallid face not betraying what she was thinking any more than they usually did.
Are you alright?
Yes.
Do you have a change of clothes?
I don't mind even if I have to wear the same clothes for a week.
Well, I mean you should probably mind a little.
I'd thought about something like this might happen, so I'd brought a change of clothes for myself. After seeing the photos of the Sirius observatory in the magazine article, I'd thought maybe I would be staying here during the interview process. And now, it was looking like I was right. Maybe part of the interview really is a test of endurance just like Inuzuka said.
What room do you want? We can stay together if you're scared, I asked.
Kirigiri seemed indecisive, looking between the 2 doors before finally pointing at one.
Huh, what a coincidence. I was just thinking I might pick that one, too. Guess that's settled then. We'll have to room together, I said.
But Kirigiri just frowned back at me.
Kidding.
That was just a joke. I'll take the leftover room. Kirigiri silently turned her back to me and entered her room. Is she mad at me? I, in turn, entered the 5th and final room. The sheets had been stripped off of the bed, and the other bathroom door had been left open. Inuzuka or Amino must have left the room like this after investigating. I sighed, making the bed, and then setting my bag on top of it. I glanced out the window just to check, but all that I saw was a white darkness. No surprises there. When is it going to stop snowing already? If by any chance the storm got worse by morning, then maybe we would be staying here for more than just 1 or 2 nights. Suddenly anxious, I looked in the fridge. Just like in the other one, there was only juice and beer. No food. That one fact highlighted a staggeringly enormous problem. There was a high chance that there was no food anywhere in the building. If we have to stay here for a few days because of the snowstorm, won't we starve? I checked in my bag. I had a chocolate pastry and a bag of candy that I'd brought to snack on. Could I survive on just these in water for who knows how many days? We might be in a way worse situation than we think we are. I sat on the bed and took a moment to just put my head in my hands. My head felt a little fuzzy. Maybe because I'd come here in the snow without even an umbrella. If I was coming down with a cold because of that, it would be no joke. I stretched out onto the bed to stare at the ceiling. I took my phone out of my pocket to check, and no service. I couldn't suppress my reaction to reading those words. A bunch of detectives were trapped in a building in the snow, and my cell phone couldn't even get service. The mystery client. Who exactly are they? When you get down to it, who would call all of us here, and why? No matter how much I tried to think about it, my mind was just in a haze. I went out into the hall again to try and raise my spirits. Kirigiri was the only one there, standing as still as a statue facing the wall. So, what are you up to? I asked, and Kirigiri turned to face me, looking like she wanted to say something. There was a recessed cabinet embedded in the wall in front of her. The cabinet door sitting open. Oh, did you find something? Inside the cabinet were rows of different strange switches. There was a panel that looked like it had written instructions, but it was all in a foreign language. German or something? There was one button that stood out from the rest of the controls. It was surrounded by a square that was striped in black and yellow as a warning signal. Could this be the self-destruct button? It's the switch to open and close the ceiling dome, Kirigiri said in awe. The instructions tell you how to move the telescope too. You can read German? I'm not fluent, I only understand it a little. It's only because I've been on numerous trips to Germany. That's a pretty big deal. I had already enough trouble with the English exams at school. Let's try pressing it. Huh. I pushed the button without waiting for Kirigiri's permission. Out of nowhere, I heard the sound of a motor running. I looked up at the ceiling, where a gap was opening up in the concave mirror. It looked almost as if the mirror had been cracked. By no means was it a mirror world that I could see through in the gap. It was the dense ashen night sky. All at once, snow began to blow in. The snow that had piled up on top of the roof fell down in thuds too. We were enveloped in freezing cold air. Whoa, cold! I frantically hit the button again, but the dome didn't stop. Wait, how do we get it to go back? You have to raise that lever and push the button again. I did as I was told, and the dome gently closed. It took less than a minute for it to shut completely, the last remaining snow fluttering down as we did. Hey, what was that noise just now? Amino fearfully peeked out from behind his door. The ceiling opened. The ceiling? Amino came out to his room to look up at it, before shooting me a look that demanded to know what kind of nonsense I was up to. My, what a pleasant surprise to see you folks all here together. Inazuka came out too. Is something the matter, Instructor Inazuka? Nah, I tried, but I just don't do with sitting still well. I was thinking I could do a little more investigation around the building, but didn't we investigate enough earlier? I was going to start over and test out a hypothesis that there's some hidden door or passageway somewhere. I sincerely doubt we'll find anything like that. Well, these girls just found a switch to open up the ceiling not 5 minutes ago, didn't they? Anyway, try using your head sometime. Even outside the fact that there's no sign of anyone going in or out, the lights were already on in the building, and the front door was even open. Can't help but feel like someone's gotta be in the building somewhere. Inazuka had a point. I nodded in agreement. Let's all go through and do a thorough investigation. But we'll split into 2 teams. If we all travel together, we'll even an opening. We called out NB from his room too, interrupting his rest. For some reason, he was staggering when he came out, looking like he might fall over. He held his head in his hands, leaning against the table. Are you alright? I asked, and he nodded silently. It didn't take long for us to split up into teams. I proclaimed I would team up with Kirigiri. She was my underclassman, and she was cute. And she was better than being a detective than I was. And most of all, she would be the most endangered if I didn't keep an eye on her. She didn't object to the team up.
So I guess the three of us in the middle-aged man squad.
Amino hurriedly interrupted Inuzuka mid-sentence.
I'll go with the girls. Look, don't you think they should have an adult?
He shifted closer to me.
Oh, I'll guess so. Then I'll leave them to you. I'll go with NB.
We split up in the hall to begin our search.
Time to get cracking, girls.
Amino stood up in front of us, like he was the leader of the group. We travelled back through the underground passageway to Building B. As the entrance, Building B had nothing but stairs leading down the passageway, devoid of any sort of decor. The walls were almost entirely glass, so they probably couldn't install any sort of switch either.
Oh boy, I'll leave the investigation to two of you. So just tell me when you're done.
Amino leaned against the handrail on the stairs, procuring a cigarette and a lighter from his suit pocket, and preparing to take a drag. Oh, I see now. He teamed up with us so he could slack off. Adults sure do play dirty. There was a lot I could say about that, but I decided to ignore him and investigate the automatic door instead. There were traces of us coming and going, left in the snow outside, but they also already looked like they were in the process of being covered up by the snow. There wasn't any sign of anyone sneaking in more recently. There wasn't anything else to investigate in Building B, so we went right back down to the underground passageway. Should we lock the front door? I hazarded, asking our fearless leader. But Amino didn't seem to care, so I trusted my own judgment and locked it anyway. We inched down the hall as Kirigiri knocked on the walls and floor. I followed her lead and started to do my own investigation of the underground passageway. And yet, we made it to Building A without any luck. Kirigiri stood up from where she'd been crouched down by the floor, brushing off her skirt and shaking her head blankly.
Of course there's no hidden room,
Amino said, pushing his cigarette into his portable ashtray.
It feels like it's a different kind of crisis. More like, I don't know, something more.
He kept muttering to himself as he climbed the stairs up to the main building. He abruptly stopped partway up, looking up at the ceiling in bewilderment.
Shit, I feel kinda dizzy.
We returned to the main hall. Inuzuka and NB were still searching through the guest rooms. Specifically, they were looking in mine.
What are you guys going in there without my permission?
I challenged, flustered. But they both kept looking in the shower and under the bed unconcerned.
Don't worry, no one's fishing through your bags.
They both emerged from the room after a bit more investigation.
No surprise, but no dice. Judging by the shape of the building, the only place there'd be a hidden passage would be through the floor. But, there wasn't anything suspicious anywhere,
Inuzuka concluded. We gathered around the table, exhaustion on all of our faces, unsure how to start up any different conversation. All of us had a laundry list of questions, but we knew there was no one here who would answer them. So, the job was a sham from the start, NB offered. We walked straight into an enemy trap, choose some random detectives from the detective library, write up a job offer that seems appropriate, and gather them all in an empty building. There are criminals out there who just want to see the looks on their victims' faces.
A trap.
There was a complicated expression on Inuzuka's face. He had gone unnaturally pale. If the proxy doesn't show up by daybreak tomorrow, I'm out, said NB, spreading his hands.
Yeah, but who knows how many days this blizzard's gonna stick around. It might last all week. What do we do for food if that happens? We couldn't find any food reserves anywhere around here.
So, we better be careful about what we eat tonight. NB put both hands on the table like he was supporting his weight. According to the analog clock, it was after 8 o'clock. Normally, I'd be lazing around in the dorms after dinner right now.
maybe we should just rest up for now.
Inuzuka swayed as he backed away from the table. Right after that, I heard something fall to the ground. I turned around to see Amino was no longer where he'd been standing. I made my way around the table to see him collapsed face down. What in the world? Something big was happening, but I couldn't make myself move, despite the state of emergency. I couldn't think about what I should be doing. It was like a heavy blanket had been draped over my thoughts. And then another one was starting to be draped over my field of vision. No, that was smoke.
Fire!
Someone shouted. Fire? I have to run. I have to get out of here. But my body felt heavy, and my consciousness was flickering in and out. I was swallowed up by white smoke, until it felt like even my body was dissolving into white smoke. Chapter 3. End.